Amidst the roar from the crowd as Dick Johnson comes onto the circuit. I have with me here at the moment Peter Brock making the Australian debut of the new Group A Commodore. Peter, it's going to be very interesting.
Yes, the weather is quite warm, track's very tight. I've got no idea what's going to happen to this car, and I've got no idea of just how fast the opposition is. So, yeah, the whole race is going to be fantastic.
Going back to New Zealand and in particular to Pukekohe, the temperature gauge on this car round past 160 odd degrees, I believe. I hope you've rectified that problem with fairly warm weather here in Melbourne.
Yes, no, it hasn't. We've solved that problem. We're back to where we were running the same car at Bathurst last year, for instance, where we didn't experience that sort of problem. Time will tell today. There are a few little differences between obviously a Group C race car and a Group A car, with the bodywork being or aerodynamics being the most important, but only one way to find out if the car's going to overheat, that's going to race.
Now, you were fiddling around with tyres yesterday. You tried Pirelli and you had a fiddle with Dunlop as well, and I see you've settled on Dunlop. Any reason there?
Well, only that it's a tyre that we know we can gauge the performance on, and I guess that it's such early days that you know, next weekend I might decide to run another brand, but certainly it's because of race that we wanted to run as many tried and proven components as possible, and Dunlop 399 compound's a compound we've used before.
Well, good luck, and I hope the Marlborough, or should I say the Mobile Holden dealer team, is looking good for season 85. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Mike Raymond.
Okay, thanks, Neil, and thanks to Peter Brock. As he said, he's not quite sure how everything's going to pan out today. A very, very quick qualifying second session yesterday, put really a blistering lap in and caught, I think, the BMW team and also Dick Johnson a little unawares as he was trailing them third on the grid after the first session of practice. But having Peter Brock on pole here in Melbourne has certainly brought alive the grandstand dwellers here at Sandown, a very popular driver. There's car number 17. The driver, of course, is Dick Johnson, and starting alongside car 62. Let's have a look at the way they will line up for round two of the Australian Touring Car Championship here at Sandown this afternoon. From position one, car number 05, Peter Brock in the Mobile Holden dealer team, Commodore. From 2 is car number 62, Jim Richards in the JPS team, BMW. From 3 is car 17, Dick Johnson of Queensland in the Palmer Tube Mills Mustang. From position 4 is car 27, Alan Jones in the Network Alpha GTV. From 5 is car number 31 from New Zealand, Neville Crichton in the JPS team, BMW. From 6, car number 21, keep an eye on this boy, Robbie Frankovic in the Mark Petch Turbo Volvo. From 7, car 26 is Colin Bond in the second of the Network Alpha cars. From position 8, car number 33, Don Smith from Sydney in the Motorsport Performances Mustang. From 9, car number 66, Kevin Bartlett in the Mitsubishi Rally Art Starion. From position number 12, a change here, we have Kevin Bartlett. Following Kevin Bartlett, John Smith in the Toyota Sprinter. In row number 6 is Arnell in the Mitsubishi Starion. And, of course, Laurie Nelson in the Ford Mustang. That's how they'll line up. A couple of the drivers being put to the rear of the field at the discretion of the stewards.
That's because when they put them over the scales yesterday with this new power to weight formula, they've got to comply with a weight restriction. And when they put Keogh's Commodore and Wilmington's big Jag over the weight scale yesterday, they didn't comply. In fact, there was 12. The Jag was 12 kilos light. So their qualifying times were thrown out the window, and both those cars were sent to the rear of the grid.
Well, there's the scene with Peter Brock in the 05 Commodore and Jim Richards, probably the pre-race favourite, in the black BMW number 62. Dick Johnson starting behind them, as we mentioned, in the Mustang car number 17.
Tyres will be a key factor. Reliability will be the key as well. And that's one thing that Jim Richards has got in his favour, because he ran in the extreme heat at Winton 2 weeks ago and proved tremendously successful in the BMW. That's one plus he's got up his sleeve. Brock having his first outing in this car in Australia. As you heard in that interview with Neil Crompton, of course, the car did run in New Zealand and not reliably. And if he hasn't got that fixed, then he's in trouble here today. It'll be interesting to see if he can now go on and justify this pole position.
Gary, he has in fact fitted a new radiator to the car and a different type of water pump and slowed the water pump speed down. So hopefully they have solved that overheating problem.
Dick Johnson had an overheating problem at Winton. He claims to have resolved that as well. So perhaps we're going to see him running for the full duration here this afternoon. we certainly need him out there and competitive. 2-lap warm-up here at Sandown before the flag drops on the first of 25 laps, roughly 100 kilometres.
The radiator and the cooling system in the Mustang was about the sole remaining component from Germany, from Zakspeed, where the car was purchased from. As we look here through the 7 Networks exclusive race cam, pictures from Dick Johnson's fantastic new Zakspeed Mustang. Its first run here at the new course at Sandown, in behind the mobile Holden dealer team Commodore of Peter Brock.
Zakspeed is about the only thing left of the original
Exactly,
component too,
yeah.
I think, isn't it? The
Yeah.
name.
Dick's not speaking really highly of German engineering at the moment.
Here they come through the tight infield section of the Sandown course. And of course, as we mentioned before, we'll be bringing you race cam pictures to the Australian Touring Car Championship from Dick Johnson's Mustang in the 100-kilometre sprint here today in very, very warm conditions. I think a lot of the Melbourne folk praying really for a little miracle today, and that is that Brocky can get off the line and keep that black BMW and that green Mustang at bay. But Brock really isn't exuding confidence at this stage. And here is the 5th member of our commentary team out on the track at work at the moment, trying to warm up the tyres, and that's Dick Johnson. Some cement dust coming out of that left-hander on the approach to the pits.
That, of course, is a different view than we're used to seeing of Dick Johnson in the interior. With this Mustang being a left-hand drive, of course, our camera has to take the other seat in the car.
Just getting a quick warm-up lap in now before the start.
So you can identify them. There goes Brock. Here's Dick Johnson, Jimmy Richards in the BMW, Alan Jones and Colin Bond in the 2 yellow Alphas. There goes the Volvo. And Kevin Bartlett in the Mitsubishi. Jim Keogh and the other Commodore.
A lot of Kiwi supporters hoping for big things.
Well, with Neville
today.
Crichton in the second BMW and Robbie Francevic in the Volvo to back Jim Richards up. By gee, they do hold a strong hand.
The Volvo, here it comes along the back straight, just going past now. Could be the surprise package in today's second round of the Touring Car Championship. Of course, ran away.
The entry of this car has opened up motor racing as a spectator sport to a whole new group of people. There are doctors' wives all across the country now.
Yes, all right. We won't go into that, Wilco. But if this man can put together the performance he did during the Wellington Street Race only a month ago, they didn't have time to practice, and they started at the back of the grid, and he absolutely steamed through the opposition. Now, Sandown's a little bit different to maybe around the docksides of Wellington, but he's been very, very confident indeed that the car didn't give him problems, and they haven't really put a lot of development back into the car after the race in Wellington. He thinks he'll be around, maybe leading the pack at the end of 100 kilometres here today.
Straight line speed is the big advantage of this Volvo. There's still a little sorting to be done in terms of handling, but the team are intent on campaigning right through the Touring Car Championship, and they've got their eyes set on Bathurst.
Their big nightmare this weekend, Gary's been tyres. The car is normally set up around Pirelli radial tyres, and they haven't been able to get hold of them this weekend. And so they've had to change the entire suspension geometry of the Volvo to try and get it handling properly. In fact, through this part of the course here, it's been picking up its inside rear wheel, and at times even two-wheeling, which is exactly what they don't want to have happening.
Well, even Brock had a question in his mind over which tyres, and ultimately went with the proven product, the Dunlops. He had the choice of Pirellis. The BMWs are running Pirellis. I know Dick Johnson had the choice of Dunlops or Avons, and I don't know what he's made a final decision on.
He's gone back to Avons. He ran Avon this morning in the warm-up.
In the warm-up, and he's going with them, is he?
Yeah, and he didn't even use Avon yesterday in practice at all. Stuck with Dunlop right through, and then this morning the Avon people convinced him to give them a run, and I said, do you like them? He said, I like anything that makes me go quicker, so he sticks with them.
Yeah, and of course throw in Goodyear along with the others, and it's turned into a real battle of the tyre manufacturers. I mean, it's amazing. I don't know, some of the competitors, some of the front runners on Goodyears, some on Avons, some on Pirellis, some on Dunlops. I mean, it's an intriguing battle. It's a whole second part of the race that you don't normally consider. But with the new layout on the track, with the hot conditions and with this new category and with things like handling and suspension still being sorted out, it's a vital component of the race.
Well, there we have the starting field lined up. Ian Thompson there in the BMW. He'll be starting at the back of the field. We've mentioned for you the top 12. Brock, Richards, Johnson, Jones, Crichton, Francevic, Bond, Smith, Bartlett, Keogh, Wilmington, and John Smith in the Toyota. Rebel Arnell, Laurie Nelson in the Capri. Brian Sampson, of course, back today with his Starion. Raymond Spencer, Laurie Hazelton, Bob Holden, Ken Harrison, Mike Minear, Martin Power and Ian Thompson. So the cars are lined up following their 2-lap warm-up. Francevic in car number 21. He'll be starting from position 6 in the field. A good start is essential here for Brock. I think the most money being on the fact that Jim Richards may well win the start. And the run down to the first corner. There's Gary Wilmington's Jaguar, privately entered car, starting at the back, as Gary explained to you the reasons why. A little light on the way in.
I tell you what, some of the cars, they'll have to carry huge amounts of ballast to make the weight. In fact, Brock is carrying about 80 kilos.
180, Gary.
180
kilos, yeah.
Ready for the start for the Pi Audio Australian Touring Car Championship, round number 2 from Sandown in Melbourne. Dick Johnson awaits the start. The flag is up. They're racing and getting off the line quickly as Brock. A little sideways look at Alan Jones down the inside and the Alpha. And the crowd comes alive as Brock now finds his next gear. Jones goes with him. Then on the inside comes Dick Johnson. Edged out is Jim Richards as Neville Crichton goes through. And look at the dust up here as they come into the first of the left-handers, and it is Brock. On the inside, there goes Neville Crichton. He is out. He's gone into the rough. And one of the Alphas, Colin Bond, also a little off the circuit.
Dick Johnson to second.
Third is Alan Jones. Fourth is Francevic at this stage as they come out of Castrol and now work up towards Motorcraft. A sensational start to round 2 of the Touring Car Championship.
Bond and Crichton in trouble at the first corner. I think Bond might have recovered and got back on the circuit. Can't say the same for Crichton at this stage, though.
Well, both the BMWs not getting the best of starts after looking threatening in practice. Richards up to 6th.
Well, Jim,
Crichton has now rejoined the field.
Well, here's Brock in 0-5. Alan Jones made a lightning start, but didn't pan out for him in the first corner. Dick Johnson into second, and Alan Jones now into third.
And Francevic up into 4th place in the Volvo.
He's done very well indeed. Not back far behind them is Kevin Bartlett, who has also made a great start in the Mitsubishi Starion.
Then Jim Richards, then Don Smith, also driving a Mustang.
Down to the right-hander, Peter Brock.
Sprinting away as he predicted. He used the Dunlops for another reason. He didn't explain it in the interview, but the Dunlop a little softer, and the game plan all along was to try and get a quick couple of sprint laps in there, open up the gap, and then regulate the pace from there on in. Johnson in second. Jones in third, who's been really pushing the Alpha all weekend. The car is set up so very hard, very firm, totally different to Colin Bond's car, which has been set up much softer.
There are 2 Commodores in the race. Peter Brock leading in one of them. Jim Keogh started from the rear of the grid in the other and has come from last to 7th place.
Just listen to the crowd as Brocky goes across the strike and leads the first circuit of the second round of the Touring Car Championship. Queensland's Dick Johnson in second place. Alan Jones getting closer to him in third. Francevic of New Zealand is the next one through. Then the JPS BMW, and a beautiful start there from Kevin Bartlett.
Kevin Bartlett followed by Jim Keogh, then Don Smith. The mix of makes in this Touring Car Championship of 85 is really amazing, isn't it?
It certainly is. And as they come up the back straight towards Motorcraft now, Dick Johnson still running in second. And there's the view from Dick Johnson's car, the Mustang, as we look through the windscreen. And there you can see the mobile Commodore of Peter Brock and the gap back to Johnson.
Here we'll get a good idea of the new part of the circuit too with the race cam view as Johnson pursues Peter Brock through that loop, through the double loop here. Now they come out onto this long sweeping section of the course. Take another right-hander here onto the dog leg. Brings them up to Goodyear corner. And around underneath the Dunlop overpass. Johnson working hard. You can see just in the corner of the screen.
Gary, you get a very good idea now of just why it's so hard on transmission and gearbox on the new Sandown circuit. Notice in the background, Johnson on and off the power, hard on the brakes, up and down from second through to fifth quite rapidly. Jones still around about 3/4 of a second behind, and then the battle. Now Richards really throwing out the challenge in the 635 BMW as the crowd again erupts to the site of Peter Brock leading at the end of lap number 2.
Brock, Johnson, Alan Jones, and Francevic under dire threat. Here comes Richards.
Richards smoking, but he takes Francevic. And after a very poor start, Jim Richards is back in touch with the leaders again. Francevic, not to be denied, has come again, so he's going to keep the pressure on Richards.
As Francevic said, finishing second is as good as finishing last. He likes winning. He's got his hands full in that department today, though.
Now, Gary, the gap between Brock and Richards, 7.6 seconds, and that's the one that I think will be the most interesting.
It was also interesting to note that Francevic didn't make up any ground in that long uphill straight there either. Did in under brakes at the corner.
The owner of the car, Mark Petch, was saying that although the Volvo is perhaps the most powerful car in the field, its inability to get around these tight corners at the moment is meaning that he's coming through something like 15 and 20 kilometres an hour slower than the other competitors, and therefore not really getting the run down the chute.
Crichton, who went off into the sand trap at the end of the main straight just after the start, recovered back on the track and has worked his way back up into 10th position.
That was bad luck, his excursion into the rough, because he'd actually outgunned Jim Richards. It looked like coming out in around about 3rd or 4th place after the first corner, but then of course the mix-up and he wound up in the runoff area. Alan Jones still holding down 3rd. Jim Richards to 4th. Francevic in 5th place. The second Alpha, driven by Colin Bond, sounding very, very much off, and in fact it won't be too long before Brock puts a lap on.
Now the big three up front. There he goes. Peter Brock in the Mobile Dealer Team Commodore. Jim Richards a little further back, still trying to stall off the New Zealander, Robbie Francevic. Dick Johnson in 2nd place behind Brock. Alan Jones in the yellow Alpha 3rd. Now Brock in front quite nicely, thank you, but the question now is reliability. A long way to go yet.
He certainly likes sprinting, and sprinting is exactly what he's doing at the moment, and it's away from Dick Johnson. A similar gap back to Alan Jones, and closing on Jones is Jim Richards.
Oh, Jones, in fact Richards rather, has dropped Francevic off very quickly and is about to mount a very serious challenge, in fact, on Alan Jones.
4.5 seconds between Brock and Johnson, and I'll put the clock again between Brock and Richards.
There goes Brock, the leader. Johnson just in view there in 2nd place. 3rd spot, at least for the moment, is Alan Jones.
Interesting, Gary, the Brock-Richards gap now 8.4 seconds, so in fact it's opening.
Here comes Johnson. There you can see Jones, and right behind Jones is Jim Richards, who should have really been up harrying Brock at this stage, but a poor start for him well back, and now he's challenging for 3rd.
Alan Jones, former World Formula One motor racing champion, and on the verge of a big comeback in that department. Hasn't really campaigned since he was successful in 81.
Here's the scrap. Once again they come onto the straight at Sandown. Here's Peter Brock going through. Behind him Dick Johnson, and here comes Jim Richards, really making the big moves on the inside in the black BMW, and now wrestles 3rd place away from Alan Jones. Jones might be quicker here under brakes, and he comes down the inside.
Oh, Dick is off.
Johnson's gone off down in the rough. Can he keep it going?
In a scream of breaks on the corner, he's sacrificed second place. He had it nailed down comfortably. Oh, he's dropped several spots. He comes back onto the track behind the Francevic and the Volvo.
Well, he has it all to do now. And that wouldn't have done the tyres a lot of good either. So he is back now behind Francevic. Peter Brock is the race leader.
So second to fifth for Dick Johnson in one fell swoop.
Peter Brock is sprinting, Gary. He's now opened that gap between himself and Richards to 10.7 seconds.
There's Johnson. Now can he retrieve one or more of these places that he's dropped?
He's coming up on Francevic, and the Mustang should be a little more nimble to get through this tight infield section at Sandown.
Richards just got Jones.
Fortunately, we weren't in audio communication with Dick Johnson when that occurred, because I'll tell you what, it wouldn't have been printable.
You wouldn't have wanted to be.
No, I don't think so. Once again, Francevic, the Brayton. Here's Johnson in car number 17. Will now be putting the pressure on the Volvo driver. That's how close he is. Coming up to the right-hander and back past the pits again. Interesting to compare the speed difference of these two down the straight.
In theory, the 2.9 litre turbocharged Volvo should be a bit quicker with 310 brake horsepower. Dick's Mustang with 300 brake horsepower. But the Volvo definitely not getting out of corners as quick as it should. But this will tell us the story. Past Ian Thompson.
Crowd giving Johnson a big hand as he makes a run down here on the inside of the Volvo.
This is where he lost it last lap.
Now pulls down the inside, not much room there, but Johnson comes back, and the crowd give him a huge cheer here in the grandstand as Johnson makes it back again into third place, or fourth place, I should say.
He pegs one spot back. He's going to find it a bit tougher, though, to reel in Alan Jones, who's holding down third at the moment. Well, poor old Dick Johnson, he was comfortably in second place when he spun out. Look at it again from the ISO at race cam. Hello. Oh, how's your lunch now? Heart in the mouth stuff for Dick Johnson. Into the sand trap, and lucky, in fact, to get out of it unaided.
Well, he kept the power on. He just caught the edge of the sand and then on some of the loose dirt down there. Fortunately, I don't think has done a great deal of tyre damage. Very lucky indeed, though. He didn't puncture a tyre coming off there. But he's fought his way back into fourth place. Brock still leading very comfortably from Jim Richards, then Alan Jones, and then fourth place now held down, of course, by Dick Johnson. Francevic still sitting in behind him.
Yes, Francevic is nothing if not determined, and he's quite serious about mounting this Volvo challenge for the Touring Car Championship, and he's learning an awful lot here at Sandown today that he's going to put to good use in the rounds to come. A total of 10 rounds for the championship this year, so there is still plenty of time for things to unfold, and of course 7 Network will be tracking the championship across Australia and bringing you the coverage. Peter Brock leads here from Jim Richards, the winner at Winton. Alan Jones, there he is, third spot. Dick Johnson, the green Mustang, is fourth, and Francevic, the Volvo, is in fifth place. Alan Jones, oh, wheel up there over the...
He's really been hurdling the Alpha around, not only at Winton, but here at Sandown. Running third on the road at the moment, and Dick Johnson closing on him. Well, that's it, the Australian Touring Car Championship 1, 2, 3. Let's check them out. Brock leading in the Commodore. Second place, Richards in the BMW, and third place to Jones in the Alpha. We'll take a break and then return live to Sandown. Welcome back to Sandown and round 2 of the Australian Touring Car Championship. There is the man who leads round number 2, the 05 Mobile Commodore, Peter Brock. and doing it very, very comfortably. Leading from Jim Richards in the BMW, Alan Jones, Dick Johnson and Robbie Francevic. Let's take a look at Peter Brock. He's been a winner, not only here, of course, at Sandown, but also at Bathurst. He's 40 on Tuesday. And, of course, wins at Bathurst in 72, 75, 78, 80, 82 and 84. I think he owns the mountain. And at Sandown, well, they haven't found a driver to beat him here yet. Of course, he's won the Enduro here 9 times and getting off to a good start. Here's Peter Brock coming down the straight. Still leading from Jim Richards and Alan Jones. And right behind Alan Jones is, of course, Dick Johnson.
Oh, right behind. Goodbye.
And here comes Johnson on the inside to take away one more spot and move to third. So Dick Johnson of Queensland. Crowd just love that. Coming up to the right-hander, we might have a chat with Dick Johnson when we get onto Motorcraft Straight. All the concentration required here as he comes down to Castrol Corner, the left-hander. And now straightens up on the run up to Motorcraft. So Johnson, after all those problems, has come back to now be running third on the road behind Peter Brock. Dick Johnson, Mike Raymond, can you hear us?
Yeah, sure can.
Well, you've had to do it all again from behind.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
What actually happened, Dick? Just to slip off the track at the end of the straight?
Yeah, mate, I just sort of tried to go in a bit too deep under brakes, trying to catch that goddamn Commodore.
Well, at this stage, you're behind Richards. You've been able to get away from Jones. You seem to be able to catch them and pass them, though, Dick.
Well, I tell you what, I'm driving the wheels off the damn thing.
You had an overheating problem with the Mustang at Winton. Is it running smoothly today for you?
Yeah, she's just on 200 at the moment.
Dick, Neil Crompton, how are the tyres hanging in there?
Yeah, just fine. These things, you can give them heaps, I hope. If they don't, well, tough cheese. I got to catch that lemon, what do you call it?
That Commodore?
Yeah.
I think it's a Holden.
Alrighty, well, they're certainly within your sight, and the laps certainly seem on your side at this stage, and at the moment everything seems to be running okay, Dick, apart from the fact you're running third and you'd like to be up there and leading it.
Yeah, I sure would.
Dick.
But anyway, this, you know, there's that German kraut can up there I got to get to.
You always had a way with words, Dick.
Oh, well, it's what comes to your head, mate, isn't it?
Alrighty, we'll let you go because you've got Alan Jones behind you, and I think he's thinking about it as well. Thank you very much.
I've got news for him.
Okay, thanks, Dick. Dick Johnson, never short on a word. Trying to come back from fifth, now up to third. He still has Jim Richards and, of course, Peter Brock.
Well, problem there for the big Jag. Gary Wilmington had the devil's own luck at Winton, and he's got it again today. But as we mentioned earlier, this is just such a complicated car, and it's almost impossible to run it without factory backing or solid factory support, because the technology involved in this machine is awesome. It's running terrifically in Europe with Tom Walkinshaw, but he's got such tremendous support from the factory. Here's poor old Gary Wilmington trying to do it single-handed virtually. I admire the man for his courage, but he really has taken on an awful handful. Big XJS Jag, if he could get it running right, it would be just so competitive. Let's go back to Jimmy Richards now. And this is the man that won the opening round of the championship at Winton. This is the car that took advantage of Brock's absence, but of course we've got Brock up front today. Jim knows that better than anybody. He didn't get the best of the start today, Jimmy Richards. Got balked in that mix-up that involved his teammate Neville Crichton and Colin Bond. And if you think it's Peter Brock's birthday, as Mike mentioned, next Tuesday, Colin Bond is 43 years old today. It wasn't much of a happy birthday for Bondy getting shunted out there at the first corner.
Well, Richards is still on the boil, chasing Peter Brock. He's had to come from a fair way back. So Brock has really had the run of the race so far in the 05 car after leading into the first corner. But providing Jim is a little easy on tyres, he's really throwing the BMW 635 around lap 10 of 25, round 2, the Australian Touring Car Championship. And, of course, the gap you can see between Jim Richards and Peter Brock, about 6.3 seconds at the moment. Black BMW coming up the back straight, past Motorcraft. Race winner, of course, at Winton, led home a 1-2 and leads the Australian Touring Car Championship on 25 points from his teammate Neville Crichton on 23. So at this stage, Jim Richards reasonably comfortable in second place, but I would think going all the way after a win, that means closing the gap on Brock.
Although it does look good for his points table, Mike, even if he does hang in there in second, with Brock not recording any points in the first round at Winton. The 635 BMW this weekend, in fact this season, switching to Pirelli tyres after using Dunlops in season 84. This particular car, the Group A car that was built for the James Hardy last year, in the hands of the Prince and Denny Holmes.
Well, Jim's giving it everything, let me tell you. He's trying all of the racetrack and then maybe another few metres. Dick Johnson still back behind him, and they are trying to close the gap on this man, Peter Brock. 64 with problems.
Laurie Nelson in the Ford Mustang is not going anywhere. They've got a couple of the Mustangs, but Dick Johnson's the only one who's found the key to them so far.
And Don Smith's gone missing as well, Gary.
Peter Brock, the man has got the advantage where Brock always seems to have the advantage. He's just got big, long legs down the straights, whether it be at Sandown or at Bathurst. Richards working overtime. He was responsible for a very quotable quote after taking out the first round of the Touring Car Championship at Winton. He said, gee, I like this winning.
Well, he's been so used to following cars in the Touring Car Championship when the BMW wasn't all that competitive, of course, under the old Group C rules. It's a different ball game now with Group A. And if anyone can possibly haul Peter Brock in, I think it could be Richards. He is trying very, very hard indeed.
It's interesting to note too, Mark, running first and second, they came off the front row of the grid together today, and did they win, wasn't it 3 Bathursts together?
Yes, in a row. Yeah. 78, 79 and 80, I think, Gary.
Yeah. And so here they are hammering away at each other. Brock, the king of Sandown. Richards knows exactly what he's up against. Third place being held down at the moment by Dick Johnson. Alan Jones is fourth. Robbie Francevic in the Volvo is in fifth place, and Neville Crichton has made a great recovery. He's a fair way back, but he's holding down sixth place in the second of the BMWs as we take a break in this round of the Australian Touring Car Championship from Sandown. Peter Brock still leading.
Welcome back to Sandown and round 2 of the Australian Touring Car Championship. Here's Peter Brock, 0-5, leading the race, but in hot pursuit is Jim Richards in car number 62, the black BMW, and Richards is starting to pull back the gap, which was 6.5 seconds, now down to 5.1 seconds and 12 laps remaining of this round 2. Brock coming up on slower cars into the left-hander, takes Mania and is now signalled to the left by the driver immediately ahead of him, and of course Richards now joins the scene as they come up Motorcraft again. Brock still doing the hand signalling in the cockpit of the car.
That cost Brock a little bit of time. It's down now to 3.6 seconds.
So Richards, after winning round 1 at Winton, chases Peter Brock, the hometown favourite. Is Brock going through down into the right-hander?
3.9 kilometres round here, so with 11.5 laps remaining, Richards has still got time. We know, he knows, that he's got the reliability because he found his way around 100 Ks at Winton in 45-degree heat, so this car will survive the BMW. This is the first Australian campaign for the mobile dealer team Commodore. Will it survive? That's going to be the question as the race winds down this final half.
Tyres were the nightmare for the dealer team. As we look here at Jim Richards closing the gap in second position.
Locked up there behind the slower car. Now he's through. Johnson looming into view as well. Did you notice that? He's dropped off Alan Jones. And he's out to make up for that mishap that put him off the circuit and cost him several placings a little earlier. Check the gap here again between Brock and Richards as they cross the start-finish line. 11 laps left for them.
4.3 seconds, Gary.
4.3. So he's knocked it back 2 seconds in the last 2.5 to 3 laps.
Jim, I think, has probably come off second best in some of these manoeuvres with the slower cars.
Brock's a past master at it, though, isn't he?
Yes, well, Jim seems to be getting them all on the tight sections as well. Watch this. Coming up behind John Smith in the little Toyota as they make the run now to Motorcraft.
Smith blew an engine yesterday and has had to install a new one overnight, so the car really hasn't been sorted and he's really not running anywhere near as well as he'd like in the little Toyota.
Coming down behind was the standard BMW. Richards powers on. Whoops. I think the speed might have frightened the other guy.
Ian Thompson in the mobile chicane.
Takes the right-hander and once again goes out after Brock, trying to pull back the gap. Two Commodores, of course, starting in the second round of the Touring Car Championship. The debut by Commodore in Group A here in Australia. Brock leading the race and some problems for Jim Keogh driving the second car.
Yes, unbelievably, Mike. He was relegated to the rear of the grid because of a weight discrepancy when the cars were scrutineered yesterday, and yet he got up to 5th place at one stage. And has now slipped back again.
Gap about the same from Peter Brock to Jim Richards and then back to Dick Johnson, Alan Jones, fourth on the road in round 2 here today at Sandown.
Considerable weight difference between the Commodore and the BMW. The BM yesterday weighing in at about 1,190 kilograms, just on its limit. Whereas Brock's Commodore at present 1,405 kilograms, and as Gary said before, carrying something like 180 kilograms of lead in ballast.
That's an awful lot of lead, isn't it?
Oh, is it ever? But the interesting thing, Gary, is that as of May, the Mobile Holden dealer team, and in particular the Special Vehicles Department of Peter Brock's organisation, will be producing a new Bathurst Special, about 500 cars, as 10% of the 5,000 required, typical of the unit. And this particular car will be 4.9 litres, and if you look at the equation between power and weight in Group A, when Peter Brock can bring the car back down underneath the 5 litre limit,
he loses about 75
that's
kilos.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's also trying to homologate a 5-speed gearbox and also going for extractors, so it's going to be very interesting. And of course, Dick Johnson came off a little worse for wear when the American people tried to homologate parts for the February 1st recognition for the Mustang, and he's missing extractors and roller camshaft.
Well, Brock certainly got it extracted at the moment. He's leading the field in the second round of the Touring Car Championship. Jim Richards and then Dick Johnson, the man here we see on screen, car 17, Palmer Tube Mills, the jolly green machine. Not quite the same grunt that the old Falcon used to have, but Johnson slowly but surely is working this Mustang into ultra reliable race trim.
Whilst Peter Brock has got headaches with weight in the Commodore, the Mustang is right down on its minimum. It's went to the scales yesterday at 1,330 kilograms, the minimum being 1,325 for a car in the 4,000 to 5,000 cc class, which is the target that Brock would like. And that was thankfully made up by the 7 Networks race cam inside the car instead of having to put ballast in it.
So that's the secret in Group A racing, which is now in force in touring car racing in Australia. The more power you've got, the more weight you've got to carry.
Richard still closing on Peter Brock, make no mistake about that. And Dick Johnson, of course, still in touch with them in 3rd place. That's how the Australian Touring Car Championship looks. Brock the leader, Richards in 2nd, Johnson in 3rd. We'll take a break and return to round 2 at Sandown. Welcome back to round 2 of the Australian Touring Car Championship from Sandown. And of course, Peter Brock still leading. Jim Richards getting just a little closer each and every lap. There's the gap. It's down to just on 3 seconds exactly as they drop down into the loop area and the right-hander. Dick Johnson still running 3rd on the road.
Johnson third, Alan Jones in fourth place, Robbie Francevic, that Volvo still out there and in fifth place. Jimmy Richards, three-time winner, as we mentioned, at Bathurst in partnership with Peter Brock, previously now residing in Australia, in Melbourne, in fact, has been in racing for an awful long time. And as I said, Bathurst winner with Brock in 78, 79 and 80, 76 Rothman Series, second Sandown 484 and fifth last year in the Australian Touring Car Championship, and at the age of 37 certainly kicked off the 85 Championship in great fashion by winning the opening round at Winton and currently holding down second place on the racetrack behind Peter Brock.
Interestingly enough, he keeps himself fit by doing some motorcycling. He's got 9 off-road bikes and a couple of road bikes, and Jim Richards strangely turning to more motorsport when he wants to get away from all of this.
Brock, Richards, Johnson, Jones, Francevic and Neville Crichton, whom we mentioned earlier. Jim Richards' BMW teammate has done remarkably well after an early mix-up to get back into sixth place, and is pretty quickly closing the gap on Francevic in the Volvo. So there's a challenge developing there.
Johnson coming up here on to Kevin Bartlett, the two of them teammates at the James Hardy 1000 a couple of years ago. And Kevin Bartlett having just returned from Florida, and in particular the Daytona 24-hour, where he teamed up with Alan Moffat and Peter McLeod and of course Greg Hansford from Queensland. He
won't be able to stall the power of the Mustang here as Johnson gives him the go-by.
Bartlett, another of the drivers, Gary, who's still squawking for more horsepower, more components when the second homologation takes place on August the 1st, 1985.
He's presently 8th on the racetrack in round 2. Keeping in mind, he had picked up 23 points in the opening round, so he has a bit ahead of him here this afternoon in pegging back. But the car is still running reliably. As we mentioned, he's waiting for the next homologation handout that will help the Stallions no end.
Yes, he managed to edge out Alan Jones to take third place at Winton and pick up those points. But of course that was a lot more corners at Winton, and handling made a bigger difference there, I think, than we're finding at Sandown. And he's just a little bit outgunned for speed on the long straights here at Sandown, Kevin Bartlett. Not the case for Johnson. Continues to put his foot into the wall as he comes out of these corners. Bartlett goes through, but he's off the pace, remember.
We've seen third go through, or second I should say. Here is our third placed driver on the road, and that is Dick Johnson in the Palmer Tube Mills entry.
It's a great shot there of the ground clearance of the current series of Group A cars. You may recall that when we had Group C there was a minimum ride height for the cars which they no longer have to comply with. And Peter Brock has been experimenting with ride height and has had the bottom of the Commodore as far as 2.5 inches off the ground. And whilst the Group A cars are very much more in the silhouette of a road-going car, they are in fact more of a genuine race car in terms of engineering. The trim's all ripped out of them, the suspension, the brakes, very much more purpose-built, and indeed some of the engine mods, but they're a little bit tighter with this power-to-weight ratio, if you like, if you'd like to call it that, than they were with the old Group C rigs, and that's what keeps them down in lap times. And Brock was saying to me on Thursday that if only we could get the 400-odd brake horsepower in this car that we had in the last one, we'd really be ripping around with the new underside of the car.
With talking about ripping around the underside of the car with 2.5 inches of clearance, I'd hate to see him over the speed humps at Bathurst.
You're not wrong there.
Interesting question there. Without the additional front air dam and rear deck spoiler on these cars as they roar down Conrod Straight, I wonder just how stable they'll be. It's probably a good question that we can ask Dick Johnson in October.
Well, there's Johnson going through, and another man who's been making progress in the field is this Kiwi, to be frank, Vic. And behind him at the moment is yet another of his fellow countrymen. That's Neville Crichton, who was runner-up to teammate Jim Richards in the opening round. He dropped back as far as, I think, about 11th in the field, and now has come back to 6th on the road.
He's done a great job, and I think he's going to get Francevic here before too much longer. They've got 5 laps remaining, and oh, look at the damage to the body panel there on the side of Crichton's otherwise pristine BMW. And if you if we get a chance later, but I don't think we will, because I think Bondi's pretty much out of things now. The damage to his car is substantial as well.
That first corner tiff really threw out some of the calculations. Took a little of the heat off Peter Brock for the opening circuits. He sprinted to the lead. He's been able to maintain a fairly substantial lead over, of course, Jim Richards. Richards gets down to 3 seconds, 2.9, then blows out again to maybe 3.5 seconds.
Crichton's going to get Francevic here shortly, I think, the next lap or so.
Francevic has an ace up his sleeve, though, Gary, particularly for the next round of the Touring Car Championship at Symmons Plains, where he goes back to the radial tyres. And it's only a matter of weeks now before they hopefully take delivery of the Generation 2 and perhaps even Generation 3 engine, which they have coming from this in direct input, as Francevic gets a little wild coming out of the left-hander and up the back straight. They will jump from around about 310 brake horsepower with the current Generation 1 engine up to about 340. This particular engine they're waiting for being water injected in turbocharged cars where heat is all important. If you can keep heat down, you can keep horsepower up.
Crichton makes no ground up the hill, but certainly closes right up under brakes as they go into the loop.
The car's also a little heavy at the moment at about 1,080 kilograms, and they're about to shed another 30 kilograms by going to a carbon fibre diff, housing and aluminium centre. So that'll pull it right back down onto its limit. And it then is going to be very, very interesting.
I'll tell you what, Crichton's got Francevic right on his limit at the moment.
Still with 5 laps remaining. Now coming back to 4 in the Australian Touring Car Championship. The battle still continues here for 5th and 6th between Bobby Francevic and Neville Crichton. And this is Crichton's chance if he can just get down the inside, but the turbo comes on in the Volvo. Just when he thought he had him set up, all of a sudden he's sitting in behind him again.
Crichton desperate to get by before they open up on the big stretches of the home straight here at Sandown, because there he's going to have a little trouble keeping tabs on Francevic in the Volvo.
Francevic was the New Zealand saloon car champion a few years ago, and Crichton, the man now on the right-hand side of screen attempting to go through, was the New Zealand endurance champion, and he gets through.
Well done, and a huge cheer from the crowd here in the grandstand, and they really appreciate the great effort that Crichton's put up here this afternoon.
Saying that Crichton was endurance champion in New Zealand in 82 and 84 in this car here, in the Benson and Hedges Championship late last year. And here's Brock.
There's Peter Brock, and this is probably the closest that Jim Richards has been to him today. It's come down to about 2.5 seconds, and laps starting to run out. Richards on the boil. Brock's car seemingly still running trouble-free, but Richards certainly closer in the last couple of laps to the Mobile Commodore 05.
1.3 seconds between Brock and Richards.
And they've got 3.5 laps left. So it's not beyond the possibility. The crowd in the grandstand rises to its feet.
The flags come out. They know that Brock is under a little bit of pressure. The laps are running out, as Gary said. And Brocky has time to pull the hand off the wheel and acknowledge back to them.
He's got a funny habit of doing that, Mike. You'll often see him getting along with either elbow on the door sill or hand out the window, cooling off his hands, because it'd be very hot in the cockpit at the moment.
Well, he's been able to put this together beautifully here today for round 2. Still really driving the Commodore hard. They're all using the complete width of the racetrack.
Did you notice there the amount of rubber and marbles to the outside of the turn? Very dirty.
You also notice that Brock hasn't got his elbow on the windowsill at the moment. Richards is making him work. Last desperate effort by Richards in these closing laps of the race to peg back Peter Brock. The man who missed the opening round of the championship at Winton came out here, qualified on pole position, and has got the winner of the opening round tucked in behind him, Jim Richards.
Through the right-hander, Peter Brock, 05, first outing for the Mobile Commodore. Skating just a little. Richards not that far behind. But whatever Richards has got in the way of cards to play, now is the time.
Gee, Brock was understeering fiercely through that turn.
Crowd will be ready to give him plenty of encouragement next time they come past the grandstand. With only a couple of circuits left to run in round 2 of the National Touring Car title.
Brock leading. Richards.
1.2 seconds.
Johnson away further back now, still holding down third spot ahead of Alan Jones, Francevic and Crichton. But with 2 laps remaining, Brock coming up to lap the other Commodore in the race, Jim Keogh's entry.
Keogh will probably stick to the sideline. There's not much he can do about it. He's running his pace. He'll get out of the way and let Brock go. Wave Brock by. Yes, he does. Brock warming up to take advantage of it.
And he'll be trying to do it in such a way as to extend that gap of fraction between himself and Richards. He's done that in the knowledge that Richards will not be able to get by before they get into the loop. So Richards has been held up by that manoeuvre. Past master, as we said, Peter Brock, at this type of racing. Richards gives it a try coming out of the loop. Takes Keogh. He didn't lose all that much.
Keogh gave him just a moment or two for a flutter there as the back end of the car broke away. That's when Richards arrived. Positions for the rest of the field still unchanged. Brock leading from Richards, then Dick Johnson, then Alan Jones, Neville Crichton and Frankovic. Coming up on some of the slower cars, Brian Sampson's Group E car that's being decked out now in Group A gear. About to have a lap put on it by Peter Brock as they come up to the right-hander, bringing him back down towards the pit area.
Now less than a second, Mike, about 0.8.
And just over a lap remaining.
Sampson, motor racing sportsman, moves to the outside to give Peter Brock and Jim Richards plenty of racing room. The crowd alive here at Sandown. They're standing in seats, waving on Peter Brock. Acknowledging with a lap to go. Jim Richards still running in second place. Johnson is third and Jones is fourth. Crichton the next one, followed by Frankovic. Coming up again towards Castrol Corner. Brock behind some slower cars. Seems to strike them just on the exit. It's the XJS Jag, and Richards sideways coming out of the corner. That's blown it. Brock acknowledges with a hand out.
Dear me.
Virtually to say sorry.
And I thought it was Brock in trouble on 2 wheels back there, but Jim certainly made a mess of that one.
Well, that little manoeuvre has just opened it up for Peter Brock as they drop over the top of the back straight, coming down to the loop area.
Back now to 2.2 seconds.
So Peter Brock, who has led every lap of round 2 of the Australian Touring Car Championship in the Group A debut of Holden Commodore. And he will have a few of the other teams now starting to scratch their heads. They thought that it would be at least half of the season before Brock could put together a win in virtually an unsorted car. Well, he's come back to prove he can do it in one race.
There's an incredible magic between Sandown and Brock, is there not, Mike? It's just absolutely amazing how he gets away with it time and again. I mean, his 9 endurance victories here are only part of the number of victories when you consider his other touring car round championship wins and also things back in the early days with sports sedans. He really dominates Sandown.
Well, I believe he could actually finish this race and he will walk across the lake here, and everyone believes he could do it. Coming down towards the pit area, almost up onto 3 wheels that time. Past the pits, Richards closing again. The grandstanders are light as round 2 of the Australian Touring Car Championship. Vote 1 Aussie power. It's Peter Brock and the Holden Commodore for the Mobile team. Hand raised in the air. Second place will go to Jim Richards in the black BMW, and Queensland's Dick Johnson will take third. Alan Jones will take fourth, Neville Crichton fifth, and Robbie Frankovic in the Turbo Volvo will finish sixth. Dick Johnson also receiving a huge hand. There's confirmation of placings in round 2. Brock the winner for Commodore, second going to Jim Richards in the BMW, and third place going to Dick Johnson in the Ford Mustang. tremendous drive by Peter Brock. All the odds virtually against him. Trying to get some air into the BMW is Jim Richards as they head off up Motorcraft. So the Pi Audio round of the Australian Touring Car Championship goes to Melbourne's own Peter Brock. 9 times winner here at Sandown. And acknowledging the cheers of very partisan Melbourne crowd who have all come out to see him try and put the wood on the European and Japanese makes here today. Cooling off after a sensational drive. And what a great entry to motorsport by Mobil, who come out a winner first day.
So Peter Brock notching first points on the board in season 85, and I dare say not the last. Jim Richards, on quick calculations, goes on to 55 points in the Australian Touring Car Championship, very much unofficial at this stage, and I would have Alan Jones in second with 40.
Well, Brocky a winner, first time out in the Commodore here at Sandown in the Touring Car Championship. We'll take a break and then return live for the presentation. Welcome back to Sandown as the cars arrive back at the finishing line. Peter Brock, of course, the winner of round 2. And there's Brocky, a winner first up today in the Pi Audio sponsored round of the championship. Second place going to Jim Richards in the BMW. And of course, third place going to Dick Johnson. Well, there are a couple of anxious moments for Jim Richards in the last lap of the race after getting so close. This is the exit now to Castrol Corner. Brock comes through there, then Richards gets out, gets a wheel in the dirt, tail almost on the guardrail, then skips back across the racetrack. Look at the marks left off the tyre, zigs and zags. And that perhaps cost Jim Richards any chance of being able to peg Peter Brock back inside the distance. He'd been trying, bringing the gap down from 4 to 3 to 2, then to 1.5 seconds. The crowd acknowledging Peter Brock's great efforts here today. They should also acknowledge Jim Richards for the way that he fought back so gallantly from the being well down in the field.
Mike, a quick look at the points and a revision of what I said before. I think Jim Richards now on to about 48 points. Alan Jones would have 40 points in second, and I make it Neville Crichton in third with 28. Then being followed by Kevin Bartlett, 36. John Smith has 28 and Brian Sampson has 27. So unofficial at this stage, but very interesting as we go to Symmons Plains.
Well, Symmons Plains, of course, is round 3 of the Australian Touring Car Championship. And naturally, the 7 Network will be bringing you all of the action of the National Touring Car title. Our crew will be at Symmons Plains and, of course, at all rounds of the Touring Car title. Little track work being carried on the exit to Castrol. You might recall how much the track broke up during the recent World Endurance Championship. They thought they'd got the sealing right and there wouldn't be any problems today. I would like to tell them they have a few problems.
That's quite a mess, isn't it, Mike? More like a rally track than circuit racing. They used a different type of asphalt, apparently, in patching the surface, but it obviously hasn't worked. The temperature playing havoc with Sandown International Motor Raceway. That's the left-hander as they make the approach run to the Motorcraft back straight.
Well, they have some patchwork to do perhaps before their next meeting with the GT Championship, and then, of course, looking ahead down the road to the Castrol Enduro, that, of course, is one of the premier events here at Sandown, and the natural curtain raiser to the James Hardy 1000 at Mount Panorama Bathurst. So some problems there for the marshals, and they're trying to do their best to clean up the circuit and to put some cement dust over some oil down there, and also that part of the track is dug out completely. Well, in the touring car breakdown of points, Richards still looking pretty good at this stage on 48, Crichton on 38, Bartlett 36, Jones on 40, Sampson 27, Smith on 25, and Brock joins the points table also on 25.
Yeah, so that gives us 3 in the top 3 positions, 2 BMWs. We'll take a break from Sandown and return with more action after this.
No, this one here. Michael, thank you very much. Peter Brock, I thought Jimmy Richards had you there for a minute.
So did I, yes. A very interesting race as far as I was concerned. I managed to get about an 8-second gap in the first 2 or 3 laps. Richards, I noticed, run off the right in the first corner. I think it was him. Then Dick did the same thing. So I hoped I could get a gap. I did get it. But, gee, he wore me down in the end, and it wasn't for that half lose he had.
A few things went your way. Alan Jones almost snuck away from you at the start. He almost got you.
Yeah, my word.
Then Neville Crichton and Colin Bond went off, and I think Jimmy Richards was inconvenienced in that.
Yes,
Dick was in second place. He went off. Jimmy Richards got back, and as I said, apart from that lose in the last corner, the last lap, it could have gone right to the wire.
Well, I think it was Jim. You know, it looked like to be Jim's race. Perhaps Dick, but I thought Jim Richards seemed to be the strongest one there, and I'm just thankful that things went my way. A fantastic debut as far as mobile hold dealer team's concerned.
How much you've been kidding to us? I mean, you know, no start in Australia, came out. Nicked pole position, nicked the race. I mean, what's going to happen when we get to Symmons Plains and the rest of the rounds?
Well, it was a very interesting turn of events. Because of a strike, most of the team's tyres have been in bond storage. I was the only car there up the front that started on brand new tyres, and it did give me a great advantage. I think for Symmons Plains, they're going to be in the same boat as me. They're going to have that new tyre advantage.
Well, it's one win apiece, Jimmy Richards and you, BMW and Commodore, but of course he's got a second place up his sleeve. He's a touch in front of you. You're going to have to get moving.
Yes, my word. It looks like being a fantastic series, and you know, it's Group A racing. That was incredibly close racing. I don't know what it looked like from the other side of the fence, but from where I was sitting, I was giving it everything I got, and Richo was closing inch by inch. It was fantastic.
It was fantastic. Thanks very much. Peter Brock,